Are you, do you really?
Going live.
We are.
Hello and welcome to the Inspired to Resign Weekly Wisdom Show. I am your host, Tammy Jaffe, helping you go from employees to entrepreneurs without all of the headaches. And we have a very special guest with us today that I'm very excited to bring on the show to talk about breaking through your BS, because how many of you know you got some BS going on? You know you're telling yourself some stories. You know that you need to break through some of this BS. Well, I am excited to have with us today Jocelyn Bellows, who is a breakdown to wake up coach, author, TV show, and podcast host. She works with men and women both on an individual level and in group settings, providing tools and resources for individuals to break through their own BS. Her unique approach provides lasting results, transforming from lack to limitless possibilities. Because we all want those limitless possibilities, right? Give me some yes, yes, yes in the comments. You want some limitless possibilities. Jocelyn takes center stage as platform, sharing her knowledge and wisdom to get to the heart of how individuals cut themselves short through their own potential and greatness. With a quick wit and enduring smile, which you'll see in a minute, and yes, with some bumps and bruises of her own along the way, continuing to share simple, effective, and efficient modalities to calm and entice through the toughest critics. In the wake of the ending of her marriage in 2018, she began a journey of self-discovery in the exploration of desiring to learn what made her tick, what was the joy that she wanted to manifest into her life. She invested in herself. So important, investing in yourself. And this helped her learning and expanding through books, conversations, coaching, and training. All along this path, she understood this, and she continues to peel back the layers of herself to discover the core of her life's purpose. Amazing, amazing, amazing. So grateful to have you on the show with us, Jocelyn, because we all know we need to cut through the BS. So tell us a little bit about how you got here, how you got started with doing this.
Oh, hi, Tammy. Good morning. Thanks so much for having me. So you sort of, it was sort of something that you shared during my bio. And truth be told, it's probably been there my entire life, if I really, really take a look back. But the turning point, probably the biggest turning point for me was, I live in Colorado these days. I moved out here about 4 years ago. And shortly after moving to Colorado, precipicing of moving to Colorado, I'd walked away from a pretty lucrative career. I was at the top of my game, making great money. I was in a senior level position where I was also calling the shots in a lot of ways operationally. And yet inside, I was crumbling. And we looked around the community that we were living in. So this isn't aligning for what we wanted for our life. So picked up and moved from Pennsylvania to Colorado. And then 6 months later, I filed for divorce. And, we moved to Colorado with the intention of starting fresh. I had no idea that starting fresh was meaning for me really starting fresh. It was in the first several months of being out here. My former partner was traveling back east because we owned a business back east, so he was gone frequently, and my son at the time was 3 and was going to preschool, and I wasn't working for the first time in 20 years of my life, and I had all this space, and I remember carrying a lot of anxiety of how am I going to pay the bills? Yes, we had the income from the business, but how was I going to pay the bills? We'd bought this house and we had gone over our budget, and our everything had shifted dramatically on our financial status. And I remember just not being able to relax and just enjoy and play. I also recognized that that deep unsettlement was something deeper. I had known for a while that there was some discord, not only in my relationship with my partner, but really recognizing how much discord was in my being. So after filing for divorce, I started working with my first life coach. And we talk about often our people talk about this term of um, midlife crisis. And I would have redefined it as midlife awakening. It's when we recognize the way that we're living into our life and it may not be aligned with who we are, what makes us happy. And that's exactly what happened. So I went through this very, very deep. And guys, just FYI, if you hear that shipping in the background, that is my little guy. He's 6, and he is on spring break this week, and he's going, I think he's going to get a shovel to go play outside in the snow. So
Yeah.
guys, this is real life, right? This is how
It
life
is.
works.
Yeah, my girl, we were just talking about this. My girls are on spring break. They're downstairs playing. They were out here singing earlier. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, girls, you either have to go downstairs or upstairs, so I can't hear you.
Just for like 20 minutes. That's all we need. So yeah, so it was really that. It was this journey of who am I? Because I defined myself by what I did, and my value and my value of who I thought I was based on the things that I did. And it took a good 6 to 8 months of me calming the noise outside of me, calming the noise inside of me,
Mm-hmm.
moving out of my mind and into my being, and recognizing that nothing I did actually mattered. What
Yeah, that's,
mattered is who I was being. And
yeah.
who I had been for so long had been this person that was working to receive um, validation from somebody else.
That was a big
And
discovery.
it
And,
was a
I'm
huge
sure
discovery.
so many people can relate to those moments. And you said, changing it from midlife, the crisis to awakening. And that happens, I think, for so many people when you get to these points, whether something shifts, right? Something changes that makes you realize, okay, like I kind of been cruising through life, not really paying much attention to some of these things. And now you're kind of shaken
Yeah.
and it creates that awakening within you.
Yeah.
What were some of those hardest discoveries that you had when you went through this journey of your awakening?
Yeah, and it's continuing, by the way. One of the hardest is how long and I still do this, by the way, I've played the victim in my own life. So part of this journey was understanding that everything in my external world, where things are working well or things are not working well, were a reflection of what was actually happening in my internal world, right? Um, and I thought I was being radically responsible for my actions,
Mhm.
but in truth, I wasn't. I was blaming and shaming other people for being the way that they were and interacting with me the way that they were interacting with me. And this is beyond just my partner. This was friendships and relationships and employers, anyone that I had any connection with at all outside of me. If people didn't show up, I get frustrated and angry and say, well, what's wrong with them? Well, that recognition turned out, I had to recognize that's how I show up for other people. That's how I show up, not for other people. That's how I show up for myself.
Mm.
I wasn't showing up for myself and staying in integrity with what I said I was going to do. If I said I was going to do something and I didn't do it because I didn't feel like I had the energy to do it,
Yeah.
I I was out of integrity with myself and what I was doing. No, it's not that you can't say that or do that, by the way. I want to just let people off the hook. Like if you recognize that you committed to something that's out of alignment with you, communicate that.
Yeah.
Own it and don't shame yourself over that. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what I had done for so long. And I still do it, by the way. I mean, truth be told, this morning I was up at 2 o'clock this morning because as I shared with you, I have a new starting on Monday, and I'm still working through processing and saying, okay, I made this decision, and it means that other things are going to have to shift around my day to day to ensure that I can accomplish everything that I want to accomplish in a way that feels fulfilling for me. And so 2 o'clock this morning, I was up until till about 3:30 until I finally got my journal out and started writing. And at 3:30, it's things as I'm writing, it's getting out of my system and I'm getting it out of my the jumbleness in my head and just putting words to the page, which is really funny because I'm also a writing coach.
Yeah.
I'm hoping I'll get it up on the website today. So if I don't, I might be premature in saying this. I literally finished it last night. An ebook, a free ebook for people to get the book out of their head and onto the page. I literally was doing that for myself this morning. And this is, I'm certainly not alone.
Yeah.
Journaling is such a healthy way to move emotion out of your being and recognizing it's a piece, but it's not going to be the piece that controls who you are. You get to do that. You actually get to do that.
Yes, yes, yes. You get to do that. And I think that's, you know, think about that wherever you're at, those of you watching, you're watching the replay. What is it that you need to stop and think about? What is it that you need to stop and look at that's in your life right now that needs to be that awakening?
Mhm.
And, you know, what questions do you have around it? You can always come in, and I tell you guys this every time. Type your questions in the chat. We want to know what questions you have about whatever subject we're talking about. And this one is so personal and so, heartfelt because I think we've all been through some awakening or we're going through one or we need to go through one. And so the questions that you have, Jocelyn and I will come back and look at those if you're watching the replay. Happy to answer those, connect with you on some of the things that you're struggling with in this because it is something that it's very personal, right? It's
Mhm.
very um, personal journey of really understanding those things that what they mean to you. Why is this happening? Why are these things around you happening? Like you mentioned, Jocelyn, that people weren't showing up, right? But it's because you weren't showing up and being able to
Right.
make some of those connections. A lot of times we don't make those connections and we think that we're just always going to have people around us that are doing these things because in truth it's we've got to show up for ourselves, we've got to show up for them, we've got to show up for the things that we want. We've got to stop making promises to do things that we don't really want to do and then not do them because we didn't want to do them in the first place. But like,
And promises to ourselves.
yes,
It
yes.
starts with ourselves. So like, one of the pieces, honestly, that I was working on at 2 o'clock this morning is that um, I've been doing I've been back in a lot of personal work in this past couple months. And I recognized how I've actually been resistant
Hmm.
to just allowing myself to be. And
Hmm.
in that resistance, closing myself off from being receptive to receiving love and allowing people in,
Yeah.
one of which is my son.
Hmm.
And so this 2 o'clock awakening for me was recognizing my son isn't, he's pouring love into me and I'm just like, I'm pushing this back and what am I teaching him? What am I teaching him? What's my responsibility in this? And what are my responsibility in this is I have to allow myself back in for me to feel good within me so that he can too. Because
Yes.
it shifts so much. And I've as we go through these waves, because I believe life is this roller coaster. We have our highs and we have our lows, and it will always coexist. The ups and the downs will always coexist. When we're feeling good
Hmm.
within our being, because we're dancing and laughing and playing and enjoyment, you recognize what's happening around you. Recognize how people are responding to you. That was the stuff that I had to really. That was a lot of what I think I created and learned over this last few years.
Hmm.
Is that recognition of when I'm happy and truly happy, not up here happy, like
Yeah.
in my being happy, that there's such a different response.
Hmm.
and how people
Absolutely.
will interact and can interact with you.
Yeah, and I know you talk a lot about, loving first and loving always. And tell us a little bit about what you mean by that and the connection there.
With loving, and ask that one more time. Sorry.
Yes, so to love yourself first and always, like putting yourself first. I know that's one of the things that you really message in your
Yes.
podcast and some of the other things that you do. And what do you really mean by
Yeah. Apologies. I had some other movement happening. And so I heard you and I was like, but I'm not present because I'm like, oh, there's stuff going on outside of my office here. Um, so an example of this, and this is, as parents, you and I are both parents, and we are business owners, right? But especially as parents, I think this comes really true. And in partnership, we have been taught and conditioned that we put the needs of others before we put the needs of ourselves first, right? Making sure that our child is taken care of. Make sure, for me, for most of my marriage, I made sure that the needs of my spouse were met before my own needs were met. So that meant like making sure that dinner was on the table, making sure that he was taken care of, that his day was smooth before I could act, like his morning was up and operational before my morning was up and operational. And I put those things in front of my own.
that?
Um, and
Yeah.
it's just a clear example. I remember this was something that occurred during the course of my marriage. So he was a professional downhill mountain bike racer, right? So most of our free weekends were spent traveling to different states to go race. And I go and part of the time that we had together was for me to be there because that he'd be gone for the weekend. And at the time he was working weekends. So those were the few weekends he'd take off. And so I'd go, but I sat sideline to his passion.
Mhm.
And one day a friend invited me to go do a triathlon. I don't know, I was in my early 20s or mid 20s. And I was like, yeah, I want to go do that. I've never done a triathlon in my life. That feels amazing. And, and I want you to come watch me. I want to go shine. It's my turn to shine.
Yes, I love
And
that.
and
Yeah.
in truth, like when that all played out,
Mhm.
I told him, I was like, I'm going to do this. He laughed at me. He's like, you're not going to train for it, which was typical of how I showed up in my life. And I was like, that actually spurred me to say, yes, I am going to train for it.
Yeah.
And I did. And you know what? I crossed that finish line and I felt amazing.
Mhm.
And I couldn't wait to do it again. And I've done it now a dozen plus since,
Yay.
over the years. But it's making sure that you are good here first before you start to give. And it's I want to be really clear. Like, we talk about filling your own cup. That's a container. We really are conduits. We're meant to be conduits in giving and sharing and receiving love. And when I talk about love, this isn't specific to a romantic love. This is in showing up in a way where you are a loving presence and sharing who you are from a centered, grounded place of being, and sharing that gift that is you with anyone that crosses your path. And it doesn't have to be in physical form. We've been in Corona lockdown for a year now, which is blows my mind. You can feel that. People can feel your energy
Mhm.
no matter what.
Yeah.
And whether you're on a Zoom call, whether you're on a phone call, people can feel that. Or
Mhm.
even in an email, if you're really in tune with yourself, you can feel people's energy. Don't hold yourself back and don't allow yourself to play small. Like, just say, hey, I'm here. This is where I am. I'm going to be a loving, compassionate soul for me and live from within that space.
Yes, that is so beautifully said. And it's funny when you were talking about feeling the energy before you even said that, like I felt you here. I felt you in my heart. Like I felt the soulfulness, the beautiful energy that you have and the passion you have around, helping people through this and finding your own path and journey through this. And
Mhm.
now just sharing that with others. And it is so heartfelt. And I can totally feel that. And I love what you share because I think it's, especially as moms, like you said, we give, 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 give. And sometimes it's hard to step back and put yourself first and put yourself in those shoes of, okay, now it's my time
Mhm.
and not feeling guilty about it. And I think that's the other thing that women struggle with is, they may do something for themselves and then they feel guilty about it, or their kids say something that, makes them feel guilty about it, or their
That
spouse.
literally just happened as we were going live because as I shared with you before we came live, I had a meeting previous to this morning. So since we've been up and operating in the household this morning, I've been on my computer, and my son came in the in between for like that moment in between, and he's like, "Oh, mom," and he's sad because he wants my attention, and right now I'm like, no, this is mommy's time right now, and setting that boundary and saying, I love you. You are safe and you are loved and you are cared for. And I will have time. I will shift my energy to you when this is done.
Mhm.
And right now you are okay. And I want to take a moment on that too, because I want to dive into that a little deeper. We as individuals are responsible for our own happiness and our own self autonomy. And so, as difficult as that is sometimes to say, because again, we're conditioned to always just be available to our children,
Mhm.
there is this piece of teaching them that they have it within themselves. Yes,
Yes.
I'm available, and you are okay.
Mhm.
And you know what? He's fine. Now he's in the garage. I don't know why he didn't. He came out from in. He came in from outside, and now he's in the garage.
Cool.
I have no idea what he's doing. He's fine,
Yeah.
but it's. I know that he is safe and he is fine, and for him to reassure himself that he is okay, because that's something we need to do for ourselves. Um, and the breaking through the BS side of this is there was a mom guilt.
Mhm.
Absolutely, there was a mom guilt of saying, "Oh God, he really needs me right now, and mom is not available." And I'm like, that's my own saying, "Nope, catch myself. He's okay.
Mhm.
He is going through his emotional state, and that's okay. It's okay to have that compassion, and he's okay, and mommy's doing her thing."
Yes. Yeah, I think we tell ourselves these stories all the time that we have to do it. There's no one else is going to do it. They can't do it themselves, but they can. They can learn and they need to learn some of these things at the appropriate age, the appropriate time, right?
Mhm,
And by us not modeling that for them, it doesn't serve them either.
mhm.
And so, this has been such an amazing conversation. And there's so many nuggets that you guys hopefully are like thinking about this, taking notes as you go. But so if people want to hear more from you, because I know you've got so many amazing stories, tell us a little bit about the podcast and where they can find you.
Yeah, so a couple places. So I have a Facebook Live show that I goes live every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Mountain Time, and you can find that on my Facebook page at Jocelyn dot Bellows. I think it's Jocelyn dot Bellows 24. I think that's my Facebook. You can also find all of my information on jocelynbellows.com. That's my website, where you can find links for both Breakdown to Wake Up, which is the live TV show that does turn into a podcast, and my previous podcast called Leap. Breakdown to Wake Up, I invite guests to come on and talk about the breakdowns that they've had in their lives and the wake up calls they've received as a result. And the Leap, which is interesting because Leap was the first podcast that came through. Leap, I was interviewing entrepreneurs about what inspired them to take a leap of faith and starting their own business. And what I quickly learned through Leap is the other side of the tail is the breakdowns. When
Mhm.
people have hit those really hard spots in their lives and decided they were going to radically change who they were and how they were showing up for themselves, to building a life that they loved for themselves. and showing up for themselves. So you can find all of that at jocelynbellows.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jocelyn. You guys have got to check out the TV show and the podcast, because you've got to hear from other people what they've gone through. And we've all had those breakdowns. We've all had the meltdowns. We've all had different things that have happened, and how they work through them and what you can learn from that is so critical, because seeing other people and be inspired by what other people have done and where they have gone is going to help you to take that next step. It's going to help you to pull yourself out when you need it. So go check that out. Thank you, Jocelyn, so much for being here. Is there anything else you want to leave them with today?
It's just this, to keep stepping forward, keep showing up for yourself, even when you don't want to, even when you think it's going to be a no. If it's a no, check in with yourself anyway, because you know what? You're going to survive. You survived this long. You're going to keep going. Keep going.
Absolutely. Beautifully said. And you guys, I always talk about get inspired to resign, and it doesn't necessarily just mean your job. Sometimes it means get inspired to resign from the life that you don't like, the life that is pulling you down, the life that isn't giving you what you want. But you've got to make that decision first. You've got to make the decision that you're going to do something differently, that you want something differently. You've got to want it bad enough to go do something about it. So we encourage you today to take a look at where you're at. Where are you at in that breakdown? Maybe you're not quite there. Maybe you're in the middle of the breakdown. Maybe you're working your way through it. Where are you at? And what is the awakening you need to have today to help you get inspired to reach your next moment, your next life, the next thing you want to do, so that you can come out ahead of where you're at. Love you all. I will see you at our next show next week on Inspired to Resign. See you all soon.